Well, the Senate is doing its job. I think there is a general need to understand the role of the Senate in this process. The person with the primary responsibility to select his team, to select his ministers, is the president, and is the one to do most of the background checks because he knows what he wants. He's the employer. He's the person they are coming to minister to assist. Now, the role of the Senate is to ensure that, one, the nominee is constitutionally qualified. Find out as a citizen, is an adult, is educated to the minimum level. And if a person is qualified to be a member of the National Assembly or qualified to contest to be a member of the National Assembly, the Constitution advises the Senate that that person is qualified to be a member of the Federal Executive Council. Now, so the job of the Senate at that level is basic. Now, there are other things. If, for example, the nominee has other history or features, like in the case of Mr. Keyamo, who had been a minister before and who had a record with the Senate, they may want to question him on that record. Now, but the majority of the work after that resides with Nigerian people, because when the Senate is empaneled or assembled or convoked, you are supposed, they are representing you. So if you know anything that may make a nominee not to be qualified, then you do that by way of petition to the Senate. Now, with respect to security agencies, their role is advisory because they have the know-how to assist the two organs that have constitutional duty of screening: the president as the executive and the Senate as the legislature. So anything they do is to advise them. I don't think they're bound to take the advice. If, for example, there's a security report that a particular person is involved in domestic violence or is being investigated for something serious, and that investigation might embarrass the government later or has some record overseas, which the senator may not know, it doesn't mean that they have to follow. They will take that into consideration. So the Senate might advise the president to say, well, in view of what we know, do you want to reconsider? Now, the president may reconsider, he may not reconsider. So I think, legally speaking, the Senate is playing its role the way it should be.
So, Parliament body, are you, as somebody who is an employer of labor, you sought to lead in different times, are you satisfied with what you saw yesterday and previously?
Okay, let me start with the appointment that the president has made. They won't be the one I would have made if I was president, maybe one or two. So everyone has their own ideological background, has their own program, what they want to do. However, as long as they are satisfactory to the president, and he is the executive because he doesn't share the executive function with anyone. Under the Constitution, the executive powers are vested in that one person, the president. So he has to choose his team. It is his right constitutionally. Now, it is not for us to supplant his judgment with ours. So he has the right to make a weak choice, a bad choice, but he cannot make an unconstitutional choice. So if the person is legally qualified, it is up to the president to use somebody to work for him whom I would rather not use to work for me. That is what we need to understand. So the Senate is not supervising the president in the choice of his ministers. Say, you are not making the right choice, this person will have been better. No, they want to ensure that they are assisting him not to violate the Constitution. For example, appointing an 18-year-old who is not old enough to be in the National Assembly, appointing someone who is not educated at all, or appointing someone who is not a Nigerian citizen. So some of the issues regarding maybe the tidying up of their papers and all of that, those have to do with the Senate rules. I think the Senate might look into a situation whereby before they invite someone to the plenary, they should make sure that they do all the housekeeping, because it should study what their colleagues do in other countries. Before you come to the plenary, that's not the place where a senator should stand up and say, I can't find one or two documents. No, they should make sure that the clerk clears all of that for them. and they are all satisfied, and they confirm from all of them, are you okay with the paper, before you invite the president. And we need to know that, there's nothing unusual about a rancorous parliament. In fact, that's the temperament of a parliament. You don't expect them to be placid and sit down there like they're watching movies. They are supposed to show their disagreement where they disagree. So I don't want Nigerians to say that when you have any activity in the Senate, any disagreement, any gesture, that, oh, the Senate is not doing the session correctly. No, the Senate is supposed to be live.
Well, we also do have this little matter of ECOWAS, but my colleagues will also have more questions for both of you when we return after this break, so stay on with us.
Thank you all for staying with us. Well, we still have these two gentlemen with us, but let me ask you, Mr. Adebayo, let me quickly follow up on the question Chamberlain asked you earlier. Now, seeing the process of the screening so far in the Senate and the constitutional requirements that you know, what balance would you say can be drawn between political considerations and actual governance, knowing that the president has to select people from all 36 states according to the Constitution, and because he doesn't know all the states, he may have to consult one way or the other, and some people will be fielded for him. What else could he have done in that regard?
Well, it's a false dilemma. It's a problem that shouldn't exist. First, stop electing people who don't know all the 36 states, because you are supposed to know your constituency. Imagine a senator representing 6 local governments saying that he doesn't know all the 6 local governments. It's never allowed. So if you want to be president, you need to be somebody who knows everybody, everywhere. So I think that for what I know about the president, he was everywhere during the campaign. We were all competing against each other. So he knows everywhere. So whatever choice is made is the choice he wants to make. However, there is no state where you don't have qualified people. So the question is what the president is looking for. I think 2 ways to look at it. One, don't ever substitute what you want for what the president should want. You should know that he knows what he's looking for. So that's number one. Number two, don't excuse that the president is making choices that otherwise he would not like to make. He makes choices that he wants to make. So let's hold him responsible for the quality of the people he chooses, and let's hold him responsible for the performance of those who he has chosen, because he has thousands of Nigerians to choose from, and he has chosen these 47 people or so, 45 from among them. So that's the best he can do in the circumstance. And as time goes on, he might learn his lesson and improve on them. But you can never know how good a candidate, a nominee is, just by looking at their CV, because governance is dynamic. One, the leadership provided by the president will determine how they perform. Some presidents we have seen in the past will make you a minister, and you can't even see the president to report back to. The president is isolated from you, so that can affect them. The president has to have a vision, not just appointing minister and say, I've done my job. He needs to lead them. And thirdly, Nigerians need to understand that we are selecting people to become ministers to govern, not to represent. The people representing you are your members of the National Assembly. So don't look at a nominee from Lagos State, representing Lagos State, to be a minister, or from Kano, representing Kano. No, that is just for constitutional requirement. Once they are serving, start evaluating them based on their governance performance. What the Constitution said we should be looking for.
Now, that raises another question, Mr. Adebayo, and it's a good thing that you are the one that mentioned it. Do you think Nigerians really understand the tasks set before anyone that they put in office? That question is advisedly asked because a good number of times there are expectations that people have of certain people in government, of ministers, of chairmen of local government, of political appointees, like in the case of this ministers that have been nominated and screened and confirmed. Do you think Nigerians have an understanding? Their expectations, no doubt, are there, unequivocal. But do you think we have due understanding of what these people are expecting, so we don't expect too much or too little from them?
We don't know enough, and that's because the institutions that are supposed to educate Nigerians themselves don't know enough. With due respect, the press doesn't know enough. So if you are evaluating the role of the Senate, the security agencies, and the role of the president in the choice of the ministers now, what are the role of the press? What are the issues they're emphasizing? They're emphasizing very sensational issues that don't, as if the journalists don't know these nominees. I've been reading through the press. I've not seen them coming up with anything that can enlighten the public about the process, about the nominees themselves, and things like that. So they go and ask senators questions which journalists should be informing senators about. So they will ask other people about things. So we need to learn that. The political parties themselves need to train their members and to train the public as to the role of different offices in government, including what it takes to be a minister. And so it is this true process of learning that we will now know that, okay, this is the quality you expect of a minister. This is the role. The man is just going, the man or woman is just going there to advise the president, to assist the president, to carry out his executive function. Nothing other than that. And the person whom is going to go and assist is the one who will determine this is the kind of person I want. I've seen, and someone who is familiar. It is a malpractice of the highest order for a president to say, I appointed somebody as minister whom I don't know anything about. I've heard people saying that, but it is totally a dereliction of executive function. You must know the person. You must, there must something that attracts you. So you cannot say I hired somebody to work in my office whom I don't know anything about. So we all have to learn, but it's not the case that the role is to be played only by those who are in the Senate or those who are in government. It will be played by everybody. These people who we are talking about now, they have
just a quick one on the issue you just raised now about political parties training their members. What was the experience for you? How easy was it, or is it, to train members of your political party?
First, we find it, first we are doing it, and we find it that it's necessary because when you talk, you see the shock. When when I was running for president, and I would say, well, look, let us work together, but when I'm selecting my cabinet, there's no politics. Then they get shocked. Why? What if I work for you? Yes, you can work for me and make us succeed. But we are not successful until we serve the public. So it doesn't mean that I'm going to make you Minister of Health because you will help me to get number of votes in this place. There are other ways I will recognize you and listen to you, have access to me, but I need to function. So when you have that culture shock, later they get used to it. So it is a process. We need to let people know. Sometimes you can become president in Nigeria, as happened in the past, where you're not even too familiar with the function of that office, with the responsibility. You can become a minister and you think your job is to compete with the governor of your state as the big man at federal level. So people that misunderstand various levels. Yes, please.
I hope that other members of the executives or other presidents would be as frank and as down to earth as you choose to be in your disposition towards political rewards for election work, so to speak. Let me come to you, Senator Adaramodu, and I'd like to quickly look beyond the dust raised by Senator Nwokocha yesterday on the challenge to the constitutional powers of the legislature by the former minister and ministerial nominee, Mr. Festus Keyamo, SAN, to the substance of it, really, to look at other past events where members of the executive have shunned invitations by the legislature and, in fact, constituted themselves as an affront to the powers of oversight of the legislature. If we looked at it holistically, Senator Adaramodu, what would be the lessons about how the legislature, or where it draws its legitimacy from, and for future incidents like that, such that its oversight functions would not be put to question?
Oh, thank you very much, my sister. Good morning. Well, there are three major functions of the legislator. Number one is to make laws. Number two is oversight functions. Number three, to represent your constituency or senatorial district. And it's an inalienable constitutional function of the legislature to oversight the executive and even the judiciary. So, and we, like you posited yesterday, when there was the issue raised maybe about one nominee over his attitude to the legislature, about oversight functions being performed by the legislature earlier in the Ninth Assembly. Definitely there will be friction at times, and then when friction happens, like Mr. Pres'l analyzed at the end of the day, explained at the end of the day what really transpired then about the issue of the distribution of 774,000 jobs across the 774 local governments of the federation, that the committee that was in charge of employment and the productivity and Nigeria. So in the Senate. So when they wanted to ask questions about how is he going to do this and how is he going to do that, and then it became something rancorous then in the Ninth Assembly, that there was a friction. So because of that, when it came yesterday, then the issue reared its head, which supposedly that we knew that it will raise its head. And then the question was posed to him, why it happened. And then he explained himself. So, but that one does not take away the rights and the functions of the legislation from oversight, from overseeing the executive. It is there and it is there. It is one out of several occasions, because there had never been very serious frictions like that between the executive and the legislator about oversight this thing. It is already, it is not an assumption. It is constitutional, and the executive knows that. And then we are not under any pressure. We are not under pressure from the legislation that the executive is not taking us, that yes, it is the legislature that is supposed to oversee them. No, it is not like that. And going forward, we are very, like what happened yesterday, it sent message, able to would-be ministers and those people that have been either advisors or whoever in the executive and even in the judiciary, that yes, there are three arms of government. There is the executive, there is the legislature, and there is the judiciary. And it is the legislature that even is the soul and the summary of democracy. And without the legislature, then it means that democracy is not even functioning. That is just the summary. So, and then the legislature appropriates for the other arms of government. And then when you appropriate, you are the one who is supposed to supervise what you have appropriated for. It is pertinent and it is constitutional. So I don't have, and we don't have any problem about that function of the legislature.
Pardon me if I'm coming there.
We are very sure, and then we believe that going forward, that kind of friction will not ever occur.
Well, pardon me there, Senator Adaramodu, your constitutional powers as the highest lawmaking body in the land is not in doubt, but some would say that the legislature itself is the one that courts disrespect. As a matter of fact, in the same 2020, the current Senate President, who was Minister of Niger Delta Affairs at the time, when he was being quizzed, he said that majority of the contracts go to members of the legislature. So does the legislature, in your own view, work to earn the respect, not just from the letter of the Constitution, but for the spirit of the Constitution as well?
I cannot hear you.
Okay. I'll take it again and make it as brief as possible this time around. I'm saying that your constitutional powers as the highest decision-making body is not in doubt, but really, some would say that does the legislature work to earn that respect? Because according to reports, the legislature courts favors, from members of the executive, and the current Senate president, while he was Minister of Niger Delta Affairs in 2020, had said that majority of lawmakers are themselves beneficiaries of contracts. So doesn't the legislature court this disrespect that it's now complaining about?
Well, that is very, very unfounded, because even as at then, that instance that you were quoting, so afterwards, when the then minister, so he said that he did not even say that legislators were taking contracts, because legislators are not contractors. And he said it categorically, that he did not mention legislators that were taking contracts from the Ministry of Niger Delta, and that, when the sensational story blows up, especially in Nigeria, so if it concerns the legislature, then Nigerians are ready to take side against the legislation. And it's never so. Because even then, when media and everybody was questioning the then minister, he said categorically, and I know it because I was in the House of Representatives then, and I was a member of the committee in charge overseeing NDDC then. He said that he did not even say it that there is one legislator that got contract at NDDC through Ministry of Niger Delta. He said so, but it was a quotation out of context then. And going forward, there's one thing that the media should even be doing at times, which I even have always been saying, even to the media, that you can even oversee the executive, oversee the legislature, oversee the judiciary, find out some things. And how do we say that one? Because even there are some parastatals, when legislature asks questions, even before the parastatals give response, some Nigerians will just be saying that, oh, they are asking those questions maybe because they don't dance to the tune of the legislation. It is never so. Because Nigerians should even accept that legislation is supposed to oversee other arms of government. The legislation is supposed to bring them down to the tracks to ensure that they do what they are supposed to do. It is the legislation that appropriates for them. And it is the same legislation that is going to see and make sure that what is appropriated for the executive especially is utilized judiciously and for the benefit of Nigerians. But when questions are raised, then it is apt for many Nigerians to think that, oh, maybe the legislators are asking questions because they have demanded for social thing and then they were not given. And in the instance that you said, that you quoted about our Senate president when he was minister, he said it categorically, that he did not accuse any legislator in particular and generally that they had jobs taken at the NDDC or the Ministry of Niger Delta. Because when the thing was raging then, we demanded that, okay, we need to see the names when it became a talk of the town. So we came to the public there that we need to see the names of any legislator that has ever taken job in NDDC or in the Ministry of Niger Delta. Nobody came up with anyone and with any name and with any identity of a legislator there. And so by the time the question was posted to the then minister, he said that it was not true that he was accusing any legislator of taking jobs in the Niger Delta.
Well, Senator Adaramodu, I'm looking at the 2020 headline here, and it's quite clear, it's direct as direct can be, but you're right that it hasn't been investigated, and I hope that the National Assembly will open its doors to that subject matter for investigation. But let's manage our time. Let me come to Mr. Adedayo with this very quick one, still on the ministerial screening. We saw last week how a female ministerial nominee was withdrawn, and we saw the introduction of the name of Mr. Festus Keyamo into the list, which has now, by the way, been expanded to 48. And some would say that the 35% affirmative action has not really been met by the president. And, you know, the name that has been introduced into the list is from the former administration. It was Minister of State twice. How fair is it that, you know, the name of a female ministerial nominee was withdrawn? Mr. Adidayo, that's for you.
Well, okay, Adebayo, number one, like I said, it's the right of the president to nominate. And when you are nominated to serve, it's a privilege, it's not your right. In the case of the person that was nominated, is from Kano State. So it doesn't have any gender implication because she was replaced with another woman. So a woman was removed and the woman was brought to replace. So it's not a gender issue, that particular incident. Secondly, Kano State is where the replacement came from. So I don't think it implicates politics of Kano. But generally, you can look at the issue of what the president promised with respect to affirmative action and what the APC promised. And it's for women to take note of that and realize that maybe he hasn't kept his promise, but his presidency is for 4 years. So he may not make the target the first time, but he should take note of it. And if he doesn't make it throughout, because he has the right to fire all the ministers next week and send another name to the Senate. So they will keep him under observation that he hasn't kept his promise and he may not keep his promise.
Well, that job is certainly cut out for the president, just as you have said. But you know, Chamberlain talked about this all-important issue of the situation in Niger and how concerning it is for us. Not too long ago, I think it was yesterday, that meeting held between the president and some states that where Nigeria shares border with Niger. There are those who are as concerned that some are reading more international dimensions to the situation in Niger, Mr. Adebayo, than local, which it actually is. For you, what are the critical issues? What are the, and in what ways do you think Nigeria should prioritize the issues of the coup in Niger? It's a local issue, there's the regional, West African regional issue, there is the international dimension to it. Which one of them do you think is so pressing and so important that will definitely, you know, affect one or the other, perhaps a little more importantly?
Well, it's a multidimensional issue. And different perspective will come into it. If I was the president, I will look at the perspective in all ramifications. Number one is a geostrategic issue for security, because if someone can come to your neighborhood and they start toppling government, you want to find out who is doing it, why are they doing it, and that is a commander-in-chief consideration. Second issue is that it's a regional issue because they are ECOWAS citizens. Niger is an ECOWAS country. We are in one community where we have certain protocols governing us, and Niger has played a major role in formulating the protocols against unconstitutional governance. Niger has implemented it against other countries before, whether in Sierra Leone, whether in Liberia, whether in the Gambia, whether in Cote d'Ivoire. So, and I've attended many meetings of ECOWAS at head of state level, the authority, council of ministers level, even at the commissions level. And Niger has played a major role in ensuring that we enforce this kind of protocol in the past. So enforcing the protocol against Niger is not violating Niger's sovereignty, legally speaking. And then we look at it from a sub-regional point of view, that Niger and Nigeria were the same people. We speak the same language essentially, and where our communities overlap and we interact all the time. So they are our people. So even if ECOWAS was not paying attention, we need to pay attention because we are neighbors. So, and then the citizens of Nigeria are worried about whether it's an invasion of our neighboring country. There are people who are concerned about the historical colonial history of Franco Niger injustice or other things, and there are those who are echoing the propaganda of international powers like Russia and France. So all of that will be taken into consideration. And then there was a communication of it that needs to be done in the public. But we know that, for example, at the international level, this is a power play is linked to what is happening in Eastern Europe, where Russia believes that the Western powers under NATO are violating the understanding between Bush and Yeltsin that the West and NATO will not go to the East and Russia will not go to the South. So if they are coming to the East in Poland, in Norway, in Ukraine, then they too will come to the South and also undermine their interest. But we don't want to be collateral damage. But what is clear legally is that the coupists in Niger are not the government of Niger. That is clear under international law. De jure, they are not the government of Niger. The government of Niger is still the one asking for intervention. Secondly, de facto, they are not the government of Niger until they are recognized as such by matter of fact. So taking action against them does not amount to taking action against a sovereign state. No, if the government of that state, legitimate government, seeks assistance, it is under international law allowed to be given. However, because of the practicality of dealing with it, we need to do more consultation. The fact that the deadline, people have talked about deadline, that deadline is not cast in stone because of diplomacy. It's just a marker as to when they should indicate whether they are accepting the position of ECOWAS or they're not. But there is a lot of underground back and forth going on and conversation going on across regions, across international organizations. And I believe that the government's role is to, one, assure Nigerians that we will not take any action which will jeopardize our relationship with our brothers and sisters in Niger. Secondly, that we are not going to compromise the security of Nigeria. Three, we will not violate the constitution of Nigeria. So we will not declare war. It's not a case of declaring war. It's a case of confirming the ECOWAS protocol. Because if you are saying we should not break Nigerian law, we should also not break ECOWAS law, because by the law of subsidiarity, ECOWAS law are superior to Nigerian law when it comes to dealing with regional issues. So it's for the government to communicate it and to everyone.
Okay, well, we're winding down now, gentlemen. So, Senator, let me ask you, what does the Senate, I mean, your colleagues, what do they think of what is going on in Niger and how ECOWAS is handling it?
Oh, well, that's good. Just a few days ago, Mr. President, that's the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, sent a communication to the Senate about what the ECOWAS have been doing and what Nigeria, as the head of ECOWAS now, joined with other ECOWAS countries, what they have been doing in respect of the coup that happened in the Niger Republic at our backyard here. So he communicated to the Senate all the steps that have been taken. And then, you know, coup is a shock action. Then there must be shock response too. So the shock responses, like maybe go to the borders, managing the borders, closing some parts of the borders, the electricity issue, and so on and so forth. And at least those are the shock reactions to the shock action of the coupists in the Niger Republic. Did
the Senate approve the electricity matter?
It was an action taken by government of Nigeria, which is good and which is in tandem with the way Nigeria think that they can tackle the coupists. First of all, like I said, a coup is a shock action. Then there must be shock responses. And part of the shock responses from Nigeria is that issue of electricity and some other issues.
That affects the generality of the population, way beyond the coupists.
No, way beyond the coupists. Number one is that when there is a coup, and then the people that the citizens of that country must know that and unexpected has happened, and unspeakable has happened, and that there must be some inconveniences so that the people, the citizens of that country will feel so pressured in order to tell the coupists that they are not doing them the best, and that they should leave or they should vacate where they are occupied illegally and unconstitutionally. So that is the first, like I said it's a shock reaction. So that shock reaction by the government of Nigeria is in order, and the border issues, they are in order. Those are shock reactions. Then other reactions.
The ultimatum, which has elapsed.
The ultimatum, the
option of force.
ECOWAS gave the ultimatum, and then the ultimatum is not cast in stone. So the ultimatum has lapsed on Sunday, and then the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria gave advices, and then we admonished ECOWAS, and then we extolled.
What did they advise on the option of force?
Look, the option of force has not even come to the Senate for debate. So there's no way we cannot advise what is not before us. Only the communication that was before the Senate was that these are the actions that have been taken so far. And then the Senate condemned that coup in its entirety. Okay. Then the Senate called on the ECOWAS Parliament to even put mouth there. And the Senate extols the federal government of Nigeria with other heads of states of ECOWAS that they should go on with diplomatic and political solutions.
Pardon me to interrupt you. Just to get on the time, is it true that northern senators have outrightly rejected any plan whatsoever to deploy troops for Niger?
In the Senate, there's nothing like northern senators, or southern senators, eastern senators, or western senators. Senate is one. And then when we are taking decision, we take decision together. So I'm not aware of either there's a sectional Senate. There's no Senate. There's no sectional Senate.
Well, there are those who say that the Senate has not been clear enough, has not been vociferous enough in terms of the clarity on the position of what the president sent to them on Saturday. Because we did read from our own correspondent saying that, some news has been erroneously reported. Even as we speak this morning, some columnists are still, writing on the fact that the Senate rejected the president's request for military intervention in Niger.
Like you posited, erroneously, it was very erroneous. Like I said, a communication was sent to the Senate by Mr. President, and that communication was the only record of what ECOWAS had taken, the steps ECOWAS had taken, together with Nigeria as the head of ECOWAS.
So you clarified to us that there was no request.
There was never a demand from Mr. President whether to go to war or not to go to war. There was never a demand there. And it is in the Constitution that before war can be declared, either within or outside Nigeria, then the executive must revert to the Senate, to the even joint session of both houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives. So that demand was not on our table at all. So the issue of rejecting what is not on our table does not even arise at all. So there was no demand, and so nothing to reject. So the only thing that was before us was a communication that so far this was what happened, this was what we have done. So just for our notice. And then we received the notice, and then we admonished, then we encouraged the federal government that since you have started taking the steps together with other heads of states of ECOWAS, political, diplomatic, go on and do that. When we get to the extreme, the government together with the ECOWAS head of states, when they take their decision, when it comes to the extreme, then the president will come back to the Senate and make a demand. Whatever demand that the president is making there is what we are going to debate on, is what we are going to take a position on. But for now, there's no position of the Senate about maybe using force or not using force. So that position has not even arisen at all. So there's no position like that. It's very erroneous for any report to say that the Senate has rejected this or has not rejected that. No, we have only extolled what steps ECOWAS, including our own government in Nigeria, as the head, has taken so far.
All right, Senator Yemi Adaramodu, Chairman, Senate Committee on Media, as well as Youth and Sports. And we'll also have Mr. Wole Adebayo, who himself was the presidential candidate of the SDP in the 2023 election. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you. God bless Nigeria.
Thank you and good morning.
All right, we're back in just a moment, everyone. Stay on with us.